Hey, how are you? My name's Phil and welcome back to some Deadlock on the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about Mina.
The city could use some new blood.
Mina's a decently squishy character that likes to use their movement abilities and good stamina management to dive people and get back out of fights safely, harassing and killing people as often as they possibly can. They're actually my most played character in the game by a pretty decent amount. I think they're really fun and quite strong even at this current state of the game where everyone's health keeps getting nerfed. But they just have a learning curve. But that's why you're here. Let's hop right into this beginner's guide to Mina. Mina has a couple of learning curves that are just very important to mentally prepare yourself for when you're learning them. And the first is their vitality stats. Their stats are just lower than most of the roster. Their max health is 660 at base level, the actual lowest in the game. They have 2 health regen, which isn't the lowest in the game, but it's amongst the lowest. They have -8 debuff resist by default, making you very susceptible to debuffs. And you only have 2 stamina to start the game. You are very squishy, you do not have a lot of stamina to get out of situations, and you just generally take more from certain effects in the game. Now, this isn't a thing to try and scare you off from playing this character. This is just this is how the character is. You need to know this if you're going to try and get better at them. The other learning curve that you have as Mina is that you're actually supposed to play quite aggressively. Early game, you get the most out of Mina by poking heavily with abilities like Love Bite and Rake and causing problems for the enemy, and just generally being a nuisance and bursting them a lot faster than they expect. So a lot of the skill expression of Mina is learning how to balance those lower base vitality stats with the fact that you want to be a diving, aggressive spirit carry. In my opinion, one of the best ways to learn about characters and master them is to really understand how their kit works at a base level. Then you can understand more of why you do what you do. So let's start by talking about Mina's abilities. We're actually going to go out of order, and we're going to start by talking about Love Bites because of how it interacts with the rest of Mina's kit. This tooltip is worded very strangely, so I'm going to read exactly what it says and then explain what it means. Your bullets apply additional spirit damage. Dealing damage, your abilities builds up to a vicious bite, dealing a burst of bonus spirit damage. Love Bites has a unique cooldown per target. 4 spirit damage per bullet with a scaling of 0.09. 45 bonus damage on proc with a scaling of 1.8. So what does that actually mean? That means that once you unlock this ability, your bullets by default deal an extra 4 spirit damage per bullet, and something that it doesn't say in the tooltip, after 6 body shots or 4 headshots, you will proc the bonus damage of Love Bites and deal that bonus proc damage. Other abilities you have also build up and proc Love Bites bonus damage, and each of them does it at different rates. The ability in practice is not that complicated, as usually it's just you shoot people until you fill up the circle above their head and then you debuff them with Love Bites. So let's talk about the levels this ability has, or the bonuses you get for leveling it. First up, on the proc, you will slow people by 30% for 3 seconds. That is a pretty powerful move speed slow, and does in fact really help you punish people aggressively as they try and run away from you. Up next is a generalized upgrade to the damage that Love Bites does. 3 extra spirit damage per bullet, putting you up to 7, and 45 extra bonus damage, putting up your bonus damage to a base of 90. Getting 2 points into Love Bites really helps out the ability and really makes it do a lot more. It's why in most games you'll put 2 points into Rake and then immediately put 2 points into Love Bites to get all the bonuses that you can out of it. Maxing out Love Bites is also quite strong at the moment because of a moderately recent change they've done to Mina. Love Bites themselves get a 5-second cooldown, meaning that instead of being able to proc them every 10 seconds, you can now proc them every 5 seconds on people. And when you proc Love Bites on any target, you get 25% bonus fire rate for 5 seconds, making you shoot a lot faster, which means that if in the middle of a teamfight you proc Love Bites on one person, you'll be able to shoot faster and either finish them off or swap to a new target and proc Love Bites on them to spread out some burst damage around the team fight. Next up, let's talk about Rake. Now, just like Love Bites, this doesn't actually say everything it does on the 10. It's a 16-second ability with a 10-meter range. The active ability is you slash with your umbrella, dealing spirit damage, increasing with their missing health, and you receive a heal for every target killed. It has a passive where you hold the aim button to briefly float, and it executes non-heroes below 60 health. It does 60 damage, scaling at 1x your spirit power, heals 25 per kill, scaling at 0.3 times your spirit power, and it says 6% bonus damage based on their missing health. Stuff that this doesn't say, it is a cone in front of you. It is not just an ability. It is a little cone based on where you swing your umbrella that does scale with your range stat. The holding aim to float carries over all your momentum, so if you do a dash jump and then hold aim, you will fly along the map as fast as you were at max velocity during your dash jump. This does apply love bites as well. Based on my testing, it does as much of a love bite proc as a headshot does by default, so it's 4 rakes proc love bites. Or in the case of if you're in the middle of combat, if you hit 3 headshots, then hit rake, you will proc your love bites. Probably the same with 4 body shots or 3 or 5 body shots, and then hit rake, you will probably proc your love bites as well. As for this ability's upgrades, the first upgrade is just 60 extra damage. Very straightforward stuff, very boring stuff. The second upgrade is 30 heal per kill and an 8 seconds off of its total cooldown. Once again, quite basic stuff. Very simple first 2 upgrades. They're just good to get in lane to help you survive and heal, because your low base health means that 25 healing if you eat a minion with Rake is pretty good. Now the max level is where stuff gets much more interesting for Rake. The bonus damage per percent of their missing health goes up to 13, and you get better spirit scaling per thing you kill with Rake, meaning that you become a really efficient farmer because you will now scale your heal based off your spirit power much, much more so. It goes up to 1.5x your spirit power. And because Mina likes to run boxes and try and get spirit power that way, as well as from their items, quite often this will all just add up to be a lot of healing anytime you just smack a T1 minion camp. You'll heal probably like a quarter of your health bar throughout the early to mid game. Let's talk about Sanguine Retreat now, our primo escape tool. This ability has a 32-second cooldown at base, a 0.6-second duration, which will make more sense in a second here, and you briefly disperse, becoming untargetable and flying to a target location, and it can be recast within a brief window. It has a 9-meter cast range that very, very, very barely scales with your spirit power, 0.02, and you have 3.5 seconds to recast it. Bottom line is this allows you to turn into a horde of bats that becomes undamageable and untargetable, which you can use to dodge things like knockdown or a bebop bomb, for example, and it moves you in and out of danger as much as you'd like. The first upgrade, you gain 25% fire rate for 8 seconds and 8 extra bullets in your gun when you cast Sanguine Retreat. It's a very, very odd part of the ability that's usually used for escape, but this does let it be used aggressively so that you can chase people down with better fire rate and more bullets in the magazine. The second upgrade is also pretty basic. You get 10 seconds off the cooldown for the ability. The final upgrade is where stuff gets fun. You get an extra recast, which means in place of just dashing, you get to dash, which means you get 3 total dashes, each with their own little period of invulnerability to help you get out of danger, and you get an extra 3 meters of range on the ability, meaning that by default you now go 12 meters instead of 9, making you go much, much further and escape much, much better than you would otherwise. Last thing up to talk about is Nox Nostra, Mina's ultimate ability. A 150-second cooldown ability with a range of 40 meters that says current bonus 0. We'll get to that in a second. The active ability of this, you unleash a cloud of bats that seek out targets, each dealing spirit damage and applying silence. It doesn't have to do any amount of damage other than just contacting a person to silence them, making this very powerful for securing kills. The passive ability says triggering love bites against heroes permanently increases the number of bats released. This means that every time you proc your love bites against specifically a hero, doesn't matter how, doesn't matter with the ult, it doesn't matter with just shooting your gun, it doesn't matter with Rake, anytime you proc it, you get extra bats added to Nox Nostra. By default, the ability releases 30 bats per second. The bats deal 4.6 damage, scaling at 0.09. They silence for 1.25 seconds. You get 2 bonus bats per love bite, and it's 75 bats released at base. That's a lot of weird, complicated stuff, but the bottom line is it's just kind of a giant AoE swarm of bats that you throw at people that silence them and applies love bites and can really burst people down, because it does a lot more than you'd expect because of how many bats you're actually throwing at people. This is also an ultimate that rewards you for playing well throughout the rest of the game. You are not able to stack love bites towards your ultimate until you have the ultimate unlocked, though, So don't worry about being as efficient as possible with proccing love bites throughout the laning phase. You might want to be a bit better about making sure they proc on people when you're fighting them after you have your ultimate unlocked, though, so you can get more bats to go to the ultimate. Let's talk about the upgrades. The upgrades are pretty basic. The first one is just plus 1.9 damage to each bat. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot considering that's how much each bat does, so it adds up really quickly. The next upgrade is just 45 seconds of cooldown onto the ability, making it come up much, much faster. At max level, it's 105 seconds base cooldown, and each bat deals 6.5 damage. But the other important thing here is that the max level upgrade is incredibly powerful. On hit, you deal 0.5% of their current health as damage to them. So hitting tanky heroes with this will shred through their health bar early, and then slow down a little bit as it goes on. But it does really, really add to your overall damage when you get this max, so in the mid to late game, your ultimate will be just ripping through people. My build's been in the background this whole time, just like most other videos I do like this. It will be uploaded and completely annotated and finished by the time this video comes out. So do not worry, you will be able to just plug and play this build. You'll be able to find it in the browser. But let's talk about ability point order, because that is a little important for Mina. You start lane with love bites 99% of the time because of how the laning phase goes right now, because you will usually be able to get love bites, rake, and then another point into rake before small camps spawn. So we'll usually be able to just one-tap small camps with Rake early game. That's why we do the ordering like this. Then we make sure we get Sanguine Retreat. Put another point into Rake so we have the easy early sustain in it, the extra damage, the extra heal per kill, and the extra cooldown so that we can lane efficiently and safely. After that, we get 2 points into Love Bites to really buff the amount of damage it does. Finish leveling Rake to make it do more damage, and finish leveling Love Bites so that we get that proc for bonus fire rate. Then we put a couple of points into our lovely Sanguine Retreat to escape better, a couple of points into Nox Nostra so that it does more damage and has better cooldown, and then we finish leveling Sanguine Retreat into Nox Nostra last. You could argue to level Nox Nostra last over Sanguine Retreat because right now the timing at which you get your last ability point is later in the game than it ever has been because of a very recent patch that went through on the 30th of June. But this is my default build because I feel like it's more important to be able to escape with Sanguine Retreat. And more often than not, Mina doesn't want the games to go long enough to finish maxing out all their abilities anyways. You typically want to end game without your build even done because you have just used your early aggressiveness to your advantage. So let's talk build. The lane items are kind of up in the air as to what order you buy them in. I have the little note here, always get Extra Spirit Mystic Burst first, after that buy as wanted. That's because Extra Spirit Mystic Burst, if you buy both of them, that means that your Rake will be able to clear any T1 camp in the game by just walking up, hitting the button once, and you will eat the entire camp. After that, I like to go into Quicksilver Reload. The bonus damage on Rake is nice, the bonus fire rate after you proc it is nice, and then just the free reload, meaning you can dump your bullets, hit Rake, even if you're not hitting somebody with it, and then continue to shoot afterwards to easily proc your love bites. After that, Surge of Power is in here. It's a pretty powerful spike. That adds extra ability power again to your Rake. It gives you even more fire rate when you activate it, and a little bit of movement speed. I'm actually not the largest fan of Surge of Power on Mina, but I don't really know what other items you should be using in its place at the moment, because I'm not the largest fan of a lot of the other early spirit items right now, because Mina doesn't use them well, and I just am not the biggest fan of them. So at the moment, Surge of Power is my de facto choice here. You can always shift to other items as needed, but it is a really powerful spike early game. You get to shoot a lot of bullets really fast, combining it with Quicksilver Reload, and Rake will hit really hard with the extra damage and the extra imbued spirit power into it. Extra health and extra stamina are bought pretty early on Mina quite often. I'll often have them in my build before I even finish Surge of Power because having the extra survivability of extra health and the extra escapability of extra stam means that I'm not dying in lane. People are really aggressive in lane in higher ranks, and so you will often need something to make sure you don't die if you are not able to always push the advantage. Speaking of pushing the advantage, Spirit Shot? Was that its old name or something? Mystic Shot is the actual item. Is a really solid poke item in lane that translates really well into the mid to late game because of just how much damage it can do. Because of how it scales with your spirit power, you can actually proc items like Tank Buster and eventually even Spirit Burn with it, which was pretty fire. Final item of the lane item section is Mystic Expansion. That's only in here because it gets us up to that 6.4k spike of spirit power, getting us 45 extra spirit power into the build when otherwise we'd only have 38. It is nice to make it easier to farm certain camps with Rake so that you can kill them better. It also makes it so that you don't have to be as close to people. In case you don't know, Rake has a 10-meter range by default. This would push it up to 12 meters because of that extra 20% range. It is pretty nice. You can upgrade it into greater expansion later, or you can just sell it as the game goes on, depending. After the lane items, we get into the mid-game items, and first up is Dispel Magic, because if you don't buy Dispel Magic on Mina, you'll probably just pop like a balloon. Debuffs are death to Mina because of how low our debuff resist is. Stuff like Slowing Hex and Bebop Bombs and Knockdown are all pretty much death to us as well. Shivs and Furnace Burns. Any number of debuffs, just get rid of them with Dispel Magic so that you can actually play the game and escape. Dispel Magic also gets you to that 4.8k spike right afterwards so that you are a little bit more tanky. After Dispel Magic, I really like going into Stam Mastery next because double air dashing gets you out of everything. If you know how to do the double diagonal air dashes where you alternate back and forth, you will know how much speed and momentum and distance that gets you, and you will know that that gets you out of danger really fast. And even if you're not good at that, being able to air dash, use your Sanguine Escape, and then air dash at the end of it because you have a second one available, you'll go a really long way and it'll be really hard to catch you. Little note here, getting Stam Mastery easily pushes you to the 6.4k Vitality Investment mark, which means that extra health is no longer necessary to hit any breakpoints. So if you need to sell it to avoid Stam Mastery because you really need to escape some stuff, it is possible. I personally recommend not selling extra health until you need slots, though, because that extra 210 bonus health really keeps you alive. After we get our green item so that we don't die all the time, we go into Tank Buster, because Tank Buster is just a really good item on Mina. You proc Tank Buster with your Love Bites, proc Tank Buster with Rake. It's not super hard for you to proc in general. It is also just a really good burst of damage that applies to anyone and anything that you're hitting. It's really, really good. And if you have enough spirit power in the build at this point in the game, even just hitting a Mystic Shot will be proccing Tank Buster on people. After you get Tank Buster, I really like Spirit Shredder bullets into Spirit Rend. Because you have to shoot to land Love Bites in the first place, Spirit Shredder bullets are something that you will be proccing and debuffing their Spirit Resist before you proc your big bite of Love Bites, meaning that they will have their resist shredded before you actually hit the bite itself, meaning that you will be doing even more damage. The same idea applies for Spirit Rend here. It's just a little bit better overall because you will get a little bit more shred if you actually hit your headshots. Plus, buying both of these will finish your orange spike and generally make your gun do a little more damage. Mina's gun damage is not super crazy, but it is still nice to be able to hit that 4.8k spike. So at this point in the game, you'll be at basically 21k, you'll have all of your slots locked up, and we won't be able to buy any of these items yet. That's one of the reasons I have this extra note here. Spirit Burn is probably the biggest power spike after you finish your core build, so if you are at this point in the game, sell extra health, buy Spirit Burn. Spirit Burn does a lot of damage once you proc it. You will not proc it super often with a lot of your kit, but it will be very easy to proc with your ultimate. So in the bigger team fights that you are hitting, possibly fighting over Rift or something, you will be proccing Spirit Burn with your ultimate, doing lots of AoE damage to the enemy team. This is also a very economical sell because extra health probably did its job of keeping you alive through the early to mid game, and you're only really losing 400 on that sell. Now at this point, we have decisions to make if we don't have slots. We can just upgrade Mystic Expansion to Greater Expansion and Quicksilver Reload to Mercurial Magnum if we want. That's why these are down here. Or, depending on how the game is going, we could sell Mystic Expansion and get our cooldown online. I typically don't recommend this because it is still good to have that expansion, but sometimes you're just at the point of the game where you're way too late into the game and you just need to make sure that you have that cooldown so that your bats are up often enough, so that your Nox Doser is up often enough. So selling that can be worth it sometimes. Hopefully, though, you have helped your team push down at least one walker by the time you hit 26k in your build. Getting more cooldown in your build at first just helps you spam bats more often so that you can escape better, putting it down to a pretty low cooldown, honestly. But after that, superior cooldown actually does apply to Love Bites, putting you down to being able to proc it every 4 seconds when you have it at max rank, which, if you're at this point in the game, it should be at max rank. So that means that every 4 seconds you can apply Love Bites to someone, constantly stacking for your ultimate and just applying tons of damage. After that, if we still have slots available or are able to kill more walkers, Boundless Spirit is up next. This is a really huge infusion of power into the build. It really helps. At this point, you will very easily be able to just hit someone with Mystic Shot to proc Spirit Burn because of all the bonus spirit power you have. especially because of how much money you have to get to this point. You will have tons of extra boon upgrades that will have helped your character get even more power. The last item that goes in a slot by default for me is Ethereal Shift. This just allows you to become completely untargetable for a second, and then when you leave it, you get a bunch of bonuses. Move speed, float speed, spirit resist, spirit power. It's a really powerful item, and it's really good for someone like Mina who likes to go in and dive, deal big burst damage, and then get out alive. Because you can go in, dive, use all your abilities, hop into E-Shift, wait a second, then as your stamina regens, use your stamina and your bats to get yourself back out again afterwards. And if you'll notice, if we haven't sold any other items and we just have kept the build pretty straightforward left to right, we will have actually hit max spirit power investment, getting that full 100 bonus spirit power from all of these other things that we have in our build. This is a very expensive part of the game, and Mina is a character that has a pretty expensive build. You'll need, as you can see, 42,400 to get to this part of the build, and it might even be an extra 400 because of having to sell extra health. But getting to this point, you will be very survivable with the ability to get out a lot with Stam Mastery, Dispel Magic, and Ethereal Shift, and you will blow people up pretty well by using Tank Buster, Spirit Burn, and all the extra power from Boundless Spirit. Transcendent cooldowns here at the end because it's just good. It does make all of your cooldowns come back faster. You usually don't want to rush into this if you're slot locked, though, because you usually need about 2 to 3 items that are active items to get good use out of it. So if you don't have E-Shift yet, you're not getting great use out of it. But extra cooldown is extra cooldown. It does make your Love Bites proc every 3.75 seconds instead of every 4 seconds, but overall it's mostly to make sure that Dispel Magic and Ethereal Shift are up when you need them. That's the base build. That's what I normally buy in a game unless I'm forced to counterbuy. Let's talk about counterbuying stuff. In the early lane, if you're dying, Reactive Barrier, Weapon Shielding, and Spirit Shielding are all worth a purchase depending on what you're dying to. If they're a double gun lane, like a Billy Hayes, Weapon Shielding will probably be pretty good for you. If they're like a Lash Talon lane, Spirit Shielding, probably pretty good for you. If they have an Abrams and a Bebop, Reactive Barrier, probably pretty good for you. These are very worth it. Getting out of lane alive is super important. Once again, we do have these little upgrades down here. I mentioned them a tiny bit a second ago, but they are good to get whenever you can get them. However, in my opinion, it is better to just go through the build as normal. If you're a little lost, if you know when to get these to get good power spikes for your build, that's great, that's fine. But overall, you do not need to get them at any point. That's why they're down here in the optional upgrades category. The defensive section here is just counter buys and survivability things. Healing Right's down here because it couldn't fit up here. It's really a lane item you buy if you need to just heal as you roam around. Debuff Reducer is actually pretty good on Mina. It gets us to go from negative 8% to 17% debuff resist, and it's really good if you're going to build into Spellbreaker or Unstoppable, because it's just free health early game, 90 bonus health is nothing to sneeze at, and it makes your debuffs that the enemy team do just be a little less bad. I would only buy this if you know you're upgrading into Spellbreaker or Unstoppable, though. Next up is Counterspell. It's a counterspell. It's always really good on Mina. Counterspell plus Dispel Magic means that you are almost impossible to lock down, unless the enemy team is just really good at locking you down. Metal Skin's here in case you're getting dove by like Wraith, Viper, Haze type characters, and you really need to win the 1v1s. I typically don't even want to buy this item. I'd rather just use Sanguine Retreat to get away, but it is a good counter buy. Spellbreaker for big Spirit Burst. Unstoppable for they're constantly getting you with hard CCs and you want to be able to fight your way through a mid-fight. Indoms in here, if their only hard CC is like a Holiday Lasso and you want to be able to just waste their ultimate because they don't really have much else that'll proc Indom, it's really only okay on Mina because more often than not, you'd rather not be in a position where Indom is necessary. You'd rather just be able to counterspell or dispel magic, something that matters. But it is still a good item that will still do you a lot of good if you're really, really needing to make sure you don't get hit by some hard CCs. Cheat Death's in here because being able to just not die on Mina can be really nice. You're a very bursty character who wants to go deep. Being able to go deep, hit that 1 HP mark and go, okay, so I don't die, I get out in the next 4 seconds. It's pretty easy with, say, triple bats off a maxed out Sanguine Retreat. It is not a bad item if you were getting blown up a lot. This last bottom row down here is some alternate offensive choices. Cold Front is just a good AoE damage item that helps you farm early and helps you bully people out early. I find that the other items in the build are a little bit better and more ubiquitous than Cold Front. You often have to get in so close for Cold Front it can be rough to use. Siphon Bullets if they have a lot of HP and you want to just siphon away that HP. It does make you a little tankier too, which is nice. Toxic Bullets actually just got recently buffed, so I think they might be good again. With how much spirit power we build, you can definitely argue for selling Mystic Shot for this late game if you need even more anti-heal. Or hell, maybe even selling it in the mid-game if you need more anti-heal. I think this very slight buff that it got makes it a much better choice for Mina because of how much spirit power we want. Crippling Headshot is here in case you just need even more shred. Hitting a headshot shreds 16% bullet and spirit resist, as well as reduces their healing by 35%. It's just kind of a good item. We don't really need the orange it provides very much, but it is just a good item to shred resistances. Arctic Blast is here in case you like Cold Front and you want to build its upgrade. Arctic Blast is a lot better than Cold Front as an item. Being able to freeze someone in place for a second and really blow them up is really nice. Plus, it actually has very high spirit scaling at 0.7, so it does a lot of damage. Last but not least is Spiritual Overflow. This item has changed quite a bit, but I think it is still very good on Mina. We don't care that much about the duration it provides, but the Spirit Lifesteal, the bonus power, the bonus health, the bonus power and fire rate when you get the passive proc, it is pretty powerful. All of these things are things that Mina likes, and if you just want a little bit more gun in your build because you're going a little bit more gun for whatever reason, this is a really good choice. So I'm doing something a little different and making this its own little tiny section of what do I sell to fit in my counter buys, or what do I sell to fit in my extra damage. Because like I said, the base build is really good, so what do you sell? It depends on what you need. Let's talk about very basic stuff of you want to add more damage to the build. Well, you have very easy default options. You get Mercurial Magnum so you can shoot more, or you get greater expansion because it gives you more spirit stuff and it makes everything a little bit bigger and easier to hit. Very simple, straightforward upgrades. If you don't want them and you want to, say, have a little more gun in your build, you can easily sell either one of them for something like Spiritual Overflow or Crippling Headshot. Selling either one of these two unupgraded for a Crippling Headshot or Spiritual Overflow in the late game is a totally fine replacement. You can also argue the exact same thing for selling either one of them for a defensive item. The amount of damage you do doesn't matter if you're constantly getting blown up by their spirit damage so that you need a Spellbreaker to survive. If you've gotten to this point and you keep getting lash ulted because they notice you being a really aggressive diver and they just lash ult you super far out of position, maybe make sure that you sell your Mystic Expansion for counterspell so that you can make sure you live through everything. By default, the first items that you look at to sell are your cheapest items that can be gotten rid of pretty easily. Mystic Shot is something that I actually am liking to hold on to longer than normal lately because it's gotten buffed to the point where with Tank Buster it can often proc Spirit Burn in the late game. But if you need a better item than just it sometimes procs Spirit Burn at range, you can replace Mystic Shot with a better item. It does fall off. 229 base spirit damage is not that much. Selling Mystic Shot for, say, Toxic Bullet so you can get that bleed over time on people as you continue to shoot them, or selling it for Crippling Headshot to get that shred, also very good. Or just Siphon Bullets so that you just die less. Dropping below the orange spike so that your gun does a little less is not as important on Mina as it is on other characters. For that part of the video, it's time for the tips and tricks. First of all, you can use Sanguine Retreat while using your ultimate of Nox Nostra. I sometimes have problems with this. The game gets a little buggy and doesn't want to let me do it sometimes, but I think that was a keybind issue that I had, as I changed my keybinds for Mina to have Sanguine Retreat always be on instant cast, and since I have done that, I have not had problems with being able to use Sanguine Retreat inside of Nox Nostra. So if you're having problems with the ability going off while you're inside of your ultimate, maybe try and do that. The only other tip and trick there is for Mina, besides just hit your abilities and shots, is you just have to know your movement. Knowing that when you dash jump, you can hold your umbrella and just float for a second and then slide and then do another sideways jump and hold your umbrella and slide. Knowing stuff like that is quite important to Mina because you are probably the actual squishiest character in the game. You have the lowest base HP, you have some of the worst HP growth. You'll be like 800 HP behind everyone else in your team, even if you do build green items. So learning how to do all of the fancy little movement techs is really important. Learning how to dash jump into floating a little bit, into doing a sanguine dash, into doing a little sideways dash in the air to float, to doing another one if you have stamina mastery. It gets you a really long way across the map. That's something that's pretty important to know. Another important thing to know is just knowing when you can do stuff like wall kicks into a little float, into a sideways dash, into another one. And just knowing how to do all of the strange little pieces of tech that help you move faster in this game. Another really important one that I would like to mention, something that I've been having to practice a lot more, is the mantle slide. In case you don't know, if you hold crouch as you mantle any object in the game, you will, without using any stamina or anything like that, just get a super high speed slide after you mantle. All I'm doing is hitting spacebar to mantle while holding forwards and then holding slide while I do it, and it sends me all the way across the rooftop, as opposed to if you just kind of mantle up onto this, you just kind of get stuck and stay there, and then you have to use stamina to get moving again. Learning how to do stuff like a mantle slide into actual stamina usage or into a sanguine alchemy to escape better will get you much further away from people than you would ever expect to be able to get away from them. And that's quite often what you will see Minas do in order to get away in ways that frustrate anybody in the lobby. But that'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching, y'all, and I appreciate you. This has just been a hopefully useful video about how to play Mina better. I really like Mina. I think that they are one of the most fun characters to play in this game. They have a really surprisingly high skill floor and an incredibly high skill ceiling, because learning how to be able to get in and out of fights safely without getting blown up is really quite difficult once you start getting into lobbies above, say, Oracle. But thanks for watching. Y'all are all cool and I appreciate you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff if you like this type of content and want to see more. And I hope to catch you all in the next one.